The bus wheezed to a stop at the Millbrook station, its brakes complaining after the long journey from the city. Among the few passengers who disembarked, one woman stood out, not because of her appearance, which was unremarkable enough, but because of the way she moved, as though gravity affected her differently. She called herself Elena Bright, and within hours of her arrival, the town was buzzing with talk of the strange newcomer who claimed to be from a place called Lyxoria, a planet orbiting a binary star system some 30 light-years from Earth. "Another nutcase," muttered Sheriff Tanner as he watched her from his office window. Elena was sitting on a bench in the town square, apparently fascinated by a common squirrel. City folks are getting weirder by the day. Dr. Morgan Reeves, professor of astronomy at the local community college, first encountered Elena at Donna's diner, where she was attempting to pay for coffee with what looked like small crystalline stones. "I'm afraid we only accept dollars," Donna was explaining patiently. "These contain pure carbon structures far more valuable than your currency," Elena replied, her accent difficult to place, somewhere between Scandinavian and something entirely unfamiliar. Morgan stepped forward. "I'll cover it," he offered, placing a $5 bill on the counter. He extended his hand. "Morgan Reeves." Elena studied his hand before taking it. Her touch sent an unexpected warmth up his arm. "Elena Bright, thank you for the assistance with your primitive exchange system." Over coffee, Elena spoke of things that both fascinated and confused Morgan: quantum entanglement as a means of communication, atmospheric composition of exoplanets he'd only theorized about, and most urgently, a warning about a massive solar event that would strike Earth in exactly 28 days. "Your sun is entering a phase of unusual activity," she explained, her gray eyes reflecting the diner's fluorescent lights with an almost metallic quality. "My people detected the coming ejection. It will devastate your communications, your power systems. I was sent to warn and help, but my ship was damaged entering your atmosphere." "And you crashed near Millbrook, of all places." Morgan couldn't hide his skepticism. "Your town sits above something ancient, something left by my ancestors thousands of years ago." Elena leaned forward. "I need access to it before it's too late." Word of the crazy alien lady spread quickly through Millbrook's population of 2,437. By evening, Mayor Florence Bailey called an impromptu town meeting at the community center. Elena stood at the front, beside a clearly uncomfortable Morgan, as she calmly repeated her warnings to the assembled townspeople. "This is ridiculous," called out Harold Jenkins, the hardware store owner. "We should call the psychiatric hospital in Riverdale." Laughter rippled through the crowd. "Perhaps she escaped from Area 51, shouted someone else, triggering more laughter. Elena remained impassive. "Your disbelief is expected. All I ask is that you prepare, store water, gather supplies that don't require electricity. When communications fail globally in 27 days, you'll understand." As the meeting devolved into mockery, Morgan felt a strange protectiveness toward Elena. There was something in her eyes, not madness, but a profound sadness, as though she was witnessing the ignorance of children too young to understand danger. Later that night, as Morgan walked Elena to the town's only motel, she stopped suddenly and looked up at the clear night sky. "They're beautiful from here," she said softly. "Different perspective." "The stars?" Morgan asked. "Home," she replied. Her hand found his in the darkness, and that strange warmth returned. "Thank you for your kindness when others showed none." Morgan found himself unable to dismiss her claims entirely. As an astronomer, he'd studied enough to know how vulnerable Earth actually was to solar events. And as a man who'd spent years alone after his wife's death, he found himself drawn to this enigmatic woman in ways he couldn't quite explain. "I'll help you," he heard himself say. "Whatever you're looking for, I'll help you find it." Elena's smile in the moonlight made his heart race. Then there may be hope for Millbrook after all. In the motel room later, Elena removed a small device from her pocket and placed it on the nightstand. It hummed softly, projecting tiny pinpoints of light onto the ceiling. A star map unlike any Morgan had ever seen, with constellations in configurations impossible from Earth's perspective. Either she was executing an elaborate hoax, or the town of Millbrook had just become the most important place on Earth. The first sign that something unusual was happening in Millbrook came 3 days after Elena's arrival. Residents awoke to find their digital clocks blinking 3, 7:33 a.m., regardless of when they had lost power during the night. Cell phones displayed the same time despite being fully charged. Even the antique grandfather clock in the town hall lobby had stopped at precisely that moment. Electromagnetic disruption, Elena explained to Morgan as they sat on his porch that morning. It's the first ripple, a precursor to the solar event. Morgan sipped his coffee thoughtfully. That doesn't explain the analog clock stopping. Time isn't what you think it is, she replied, her eyes following a hummingbird that hovered unusually close to them. The tiny bird seemed fascinated by Elena, eventually landing on her outstretched finger, behavior Morgan had never witnessed in his 20 years of birdwatching. "How are you doing that?" he whispered. Elena's lips curved into a slight smile. "All living things recognize patterns of energy. Your animals sense I'm different, but they don't fear what they don't understand. Only humans do that." That evening, as Morgan guided Elena through the wooded area behind the community college where he taught, they witnessed the second inexplicable phenomenon. The night sky above Millbrook erupted in dancing ribbons of green and purple light, aurora borealis, hundreds of miles south of where such displays should be possible. "Northern Lights in Virginia," Morgan breathed, his academic mind racing for explanations. "It's beautiful but impossible." "The magnetic field is already weakening," Elena said, her face illuminated by the celestial light show. "These are just tremors before the quake." They stood together on the hillside, shoulders touching, as the entire town emerged from their homes to gaze upward. For a brief moment, wonder replaced skepticism in the collective consciousness of Millbrook. "Maybe now they'll listen," Morgan said. Elena turned to face him, her expression somber. "They'll need more than pretty lights." In the days that followed, reports of strange dreams swept through Millbrook like a fever. Residents described visions of crystalline cities beneath purple skies, of beings with silvery skin and eyes like Elena's, of messages in languages they couldn't understand but somehow comprehended upon waking. "Mass hysteria," declared Mayor Bailey at an emergency council meeting, "brought on by this woman's stories and coincidental power surges." "What about the weather?" countered Morgan, pointing to meteorological data he'd compiled. "She predicted the exact pattern of the storm front 3 days ago, down to the minute it would reach town limits. That's beyond coincidence." The council chamber erupted in argument. Elena sat quietly in the back row, observing the discord with detached interest. Later that night, Morgan found Elena at the lake's edge, her hands hovering over the water's surface. Beneath her palms, the water swirled in impossible patterns, forming miniature whirlpools that seemed to dance to an unheard rhythm. "You shouldn't be doing that where people might see," he cautioned, though he couldn't tear his eyes away from the mesmerizing display. "The water remembers," she said cryptically. "It's been touched by my kind before long ago. The earth beneath this lake holds memories older than your civilization." Morgan sat beside her on the dock. "I've been researching local geology. There are unusual mineral deposits in this region that scientists have never fully explained. Is that what you're looking for?" Elena's hands stilled and the water returned to its natural state. "Not minerals as you understand them, something left behind, a safeguard." She turned to him, her face close enough that he could see flecks of silver in her irises. "Morgan, I haven't been entirely truthful." His heart sank. "So you're not an alien?" "I am, but I wasn't sent here. I fled here." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "My world is dying. The same solar event that threatens Earth destroyed much of my home system. Some of us escaped, scattered to worlds where our ancestors had left. Insurance policies." The revelation hung between them in the cool night air. Morgan found himself reaching for her hand, not out of pity, but something deeper, a connection he hadn't felt since before his wife's illness. "You're a refugee," he said softly. Elena nodded, one who can help save her new home if given the chance. Their fingers intertwined as a shooting star streaked overhead, except it moved too slowly and made a gradual turn toward the horizon. "Another ship?" Morgan asked. "No," Elena's grip tightened. "They're already looking for me." "Who?" "Those who believe other worlds and their technologies should be claimed rather than communicated with." Her eyes reflected the distant light. "Your government has known about visitors for decades. They want what I know, what I can access." She turned to face him fully. "Will you still help me, knowing I've not told you everything?" Instead of answering, Morgan leaned forward, drawn by something beyond rational thought. Their lips met in a gentle kiss that seemed to make the air around them shimmer with static electricity. When he pulled back, Alina's eyes were glowing faintly in the darkness. "I'll help you," he said, "but Millbrook needs proof they can't dismiss, something undeniable." Alina smiled, touching his face with fingers that felt unnaturally warm. "Tomorrow they'll have it." She glanced up at the stars. 17 days remain, we need to hurry." As they walked back toward town, neither noticed the figures watching from the edge of the forest. Men in dark clothing taking photographs with specialized equipment, their earpieces glinting in the moonlight. In Morgan's dreams that night, he saw Alina standing beneath twin suns, her true form finally revealed. He woke with tears on his face, though he couldn't remember why. The annual Millbrook Harvest Festival had been a town tradition for over a century. Despite the growing unease about the strange occurrences, Mayor Bailey insisted the celebration continue as planned. "We need normalcy," she declared to the planning committee. "This alien nonsense has gone on long enough." The town square transformed overnight with streamers, booths, and the centerpiece, a gazebo decorated with autumn flowers where the local band would perform. Children ran between food stalls while their parents pretended everything was normal, despite the inexplicable lights that had appeared in the sky for 3 consecutive nights. Morgan found Alina standing at the edge of the festivities, watching families enjoy cotton candy and carnival games with an expression of wistful curiosity. "We had gatherings like this," she said when he approached. "Different but the same in all the ways that matter, community, connection." "You miss your home," Morgan observed, handing her a caramel apple. Alina examined the treat before taking a tentative bite. Her eyes widened with surprise at the sweetness. "Yes, but home is complicated now. It may no longer exist as I knew it." The afternoon proceeded peacefully until the mayor took the gazebo stage for her annual address. As she spoke about Millbrook's resilience and traditions, the sky darkened unnaturally. People looked up, murmuring with concern at the gathering clouds that seemed to spiral directly above the town square. "Just a summer storm," Mayor Bailey assured through the microphone, though her voice betrayed her uncertainty. Alina stepped forward, moving through the crowd that parted instinctively before her. Something in her demeanor had changed, a quiet confidence that commanded attention without asking for it. "It's time they knew," she said to Morgan, her voice carrying strangely in the suddenly still air. Before he could respond, Alina ascended the gazebo steps. Mayor Bailey faltered mid-sentence as Alina approached the microphone. "People of Millbrook," Alina began, her accent now more pronounced. "For days you've witnessed signs you cannot explain. You've dreamed of worlds beyond your own. You felt the earth beneath you respond to energies you don't understand." The crowd grew hushed. Even the children stopped their play to watch. "You believe I am disturbed or perpetrating a hoax. I understand your skepticism. In your position, I might feel the same." Alina raised her hands slowly. "But there are 16 days remaining before a solar event that will devastate your global infrastructure. You need to prepare, and to do that, you need to believe." What happened next would be described differently by each witness, yet all would agree it defied explanation. The space between Alina's raised palms shimmered, then darkened to the deepest black. Pinpoints of light appeared within the void, stars, constellations in configurations no Earth telescope had ever captured. The miniature galaxy rotated slowly, expanding until it was large enough for everyone to see details of planets, moons, asteroid fields, and 2 brilliant suns at its center. From this celestial map, a beam of light projected outward, creating a holographic display that hovered above the gazebo. "This is like Soria," Alina said softly, though everyone could hear her perfectly. "My home, this was its destruction." The hologram showed a massive solar flare erupting from one of the binary stars, engulfing nearby planets. "And this is Earth, 16 days from now." The image shifted to show their own solar system, with a similar eruption from their sun reaching toward Earth like a fiery hand. Gasps and cries rose from the crowd. A woman fainted, children clung to their parents. "I can help you," Alina continued, "but I need access to what lies beneath your lake, technology left by my ancestors millennia ago. A shield that can protect this region, at least, from the worst effects." The holographic display vanished, but the miniature galaxy remained suspended between her hands for several more seconds before it too faded away. The silence that followed was absolute. Then, predictably, chaos erupted. Some people ran from the square in terror. Others surged forward, questions pouring from them like water from a broken dam. Mayor Bailey called for order, her voice drowned out by the commotion. Morgan pushed through the crowd, reaching Alina as she swayed slightly, her demonstration having clearly cost her physically. "Are you all right?" he asked, supporting her with an arm around her waist. The energy expenditure was significant, she leaned against him, but necessary. Sheriff Tanner approached them, his face unreadable. "I think you two better come with me, for your protection," he added, glancing at the increasingly agitated crowd. At the sheriff's office, a hastily assembled group of town officials bombarded Alina with questions. How had she done that? What exactly was beneath the lake? Why Millbrook, of all places? "Your town was built near an ancient outpost," Alina explained patiently. "My people visited Earth many times throughout your history, establishing monitoring stations and emergency shelters. This region housed one of the most sophisticated installations." "How do we know this solar event is real?" demanded Councilman Peters. "This could all be elaborate trickery." "Check with your space agencies," Alina replied. "They've likely detected unusual activity already but are downplaying it to prevent panic." Morgan, who had been quietly making calls, looked up from his phone. "NASA just issued a minor alert about increased solar activity expected in the coming weeks. They're calling it nothing to worry about." "They always minimize until it's too late," Alina said. As the meeting continued, Morgan noticed Alina's gaze repeatedly drifting to him. When their eyes met, he felt that same electric connection that had sparked between them at the lake. The memory of their kiss lingered, a moment of intimacy amid growing chaos. Later that night, safe in Morgan's home after escaping the barrage of questions, Alina allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. "I revealed more than I intended," she admitted, sitting on the edge of his bed while he prepared tea in the kitchen. "My people prefer subtlety. Demonstration is considered indelicate." Morgan returned with 2 steaming mugs. Well, subtlety wasn't working with this town. He sat beside her, their shoulders touching. "You're exhausted," he observed. "The manipulation of matter and energy requires focus." She accepted the tea gratefully. "I haven't fully adapted to your planet's atmospheric composition. It makes precision difficult." In the soft lamplight with her guard lowered, Alina looked almost human, beautiful in a way that transcended her otherworldliness. Morgan found himself reaching to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered against her cheek. "What happens after?" he asked quietly. "After you save us from this solar event?" Alina set down her mug and turned to face him fully. "I don't know," she confessed. "I never planned beyond survival." Their second kiss was different from the first, less hesitant, more urgent. Morgan felt a gentle hum of energy where their skin touched, like static electricity but warmer, more alive. When they parted, Alina's eyes glowed faintly in the dimness. "Your physiology is compatible with mine," she whispered, surprise evident in her voice. Morgan smiled. "Is that your scientific way of saying you like me?" Her answering laugh was the most human sound he'd heard from her. "Perhaps, though like seems inadequate." As they drew closer together, outside Morgan's window, the night sky blazed with another aurora, this one more intense than before. But neither of them noticed as they found connection that transcended the vast distances between their worlds. Across town, Mayor Bailey convened a secret meeting with select council members and contacted federal authorities about their situation, unaware that her actions would soon threaten not just Alina, but all of Millbrook's chances for survival. Dawn broke over Millbrook with an unnatural crimson hue, as though the sun itself was offering a warning. Morgan woke to find Alina standing by his bedroom window, her silhouette outlined against the blood-red light. Her skin seemed to shimmer faintly, absorbing and reflecting the unusual sunrise in ways that reminded him she was not of this world. 15 days, she said without turning. "The preliminary wave has already begun altering your planet's magnetosphere." Morgan joined her at the window, his hand finding hers. The intimacy they'd shared through the night lingered between them, a bridge across the cosmic gulf that separated their origins. "The town council is meeting at 9, he told her. After your demonstration yesterday, even the skeptics are asking questions. Alina nodded, her expression serious. Questions are good, fear-driven actions are not. They couldn't have known that Mayor Bailey had spent the night on a secure line with government officials who had been monitoring unusual electromagnetic activity centered on Millbrook for days. Nor could they have anticipated how quickly those officials would mobilize. By mid-morning, the town hall overflowed with residents. The mood had shifted dramatically from mockery to urgent concern. Alina stood at the front of the room, now treated with a mixture of awe and wariness. We need to establish underground shelters, she explained, using Morgan's laptop to display diagrams of reinforced structures. Your town's infrastructure will fail completely during the event. Without preparation, you'll be without power, communications, or modern conveniences for months, possibly years. Councilwoman Alvarez raised her hand. What about neighboring towns, the rest of the country? I can only protect what lies within the radius of the shield, Alina answered honestly. Approximately 20 miles from the center of the lake. Beyond that, she didn't need to finish the thought. So we're just supposed to save ourselves and let everyone else suffer? Mayor Bailey's voice cut through the murmurs. She stood at the back of the room, her usual political smile replaced by a hard line. We can warn others to prepare, Morgan interjected. But Alina's technology can only cover a limited area. The meeting devolved into heated debate about moral obligations versus practical limitations. Through it all, Alina remained calm, though Morgan noticed her watching the mayor with growing concern. As the town hall emptied, Alina pulled Morgan aside. She contacted your authorities, she whispered urgently. I can sense active transmissions scanning for my energy signature. Morgan's stomach dropped. How much time do we have? Not enough. Her eyes darted to the windows. We need to reach the lake today. They slipped out through a side exit, only to find Sheriff Tanner waiting beside his patrol car. I figured you'd be making a run for it, he said, surprising them by opening the rear door. Get in, I'll take you to the lake. During the tense drive, Tanner explained that he'd overheard the mayor's call. Don't know if you're really an alien, he told Alina, eyes meeting hers in the rearview mirror. But I've been sheriff here for 24 years. I know when someone's telling the truth about wanting to help. At the lake's eastern shore, far from the public beach, Alina led them to a seemingly unremarkable outcropping of rocks. She placed her palms against the stone surface, which began to glow faintly beneath her touch. The entrance has been sealed for thousands of years, she explained as the rock face started to shimmer. Only compatible genetic signatures can activate it. Morgan watched in amazement as a seam appeared in the solid rock, widening into a passage that sloped downward. Cool air with a metallic scent wafted from the opening. I'll keep watch, Tanner offered, unholstering his sidearm. Town's divided on this whole thing. Some folks might try to interfere. Inside the tunnel, crystalline formations in the walls provided soft illumination. Alina moved with newfound energy, as though proximity to her people's technology was revitalizing her. This outpost was established during Earth's last ice age, she explained as they descended. A monitoring station primarily, but equipped with defensive capabilities in case of cosmic threats. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber beneath the lake. At its center stood a pillar of what appeared to be liquid metal, continuously flowing in defiance of gravity. Surrounding it were consoles of a material that resembled obsidian but glowed with internal light. It's still operational, Alina breathed, relief evident in her voice. She approached the nearest console, her fingers dancing across its surface. Symbols appeared and rearranged themselves in response to her touch. Can you really protect the town with this? Morgan asked, awed by the advanced technology. I can create a localized field that will deflect the worst of the solar radiation, she confirmed. But I need to calibrate it and... She stopped abruptly, her head tilting as though listening to something inaudible to human ears. We have to hurry, they're coming. For the next several hours, Morgan assisted as best he could, following Alina's instructions to gather specific crystalline components and position them around the chamber. Their work took on greater urgency when Tanner called down to report black SUVs entering town and men in suits questioning residents. As evening approached, Alina activated a projection that displayed the sun in real time. Morgan gasped at the massive flare already forming on its surface, far larger than any he'd studied in his astronomical career. The shield requires a biological link to maintain stability, Alina explained, her voice tight with concentration. Someone physically connected to the system. You, Morgan asked, dread filling him. She nodded. I'll need to remain here in stasis for the duration of the event. How long? 3 days, perhaps 4. She turned to face him fully, taking his hands in hers. Morgan, I need to show you something. Their foreheads touched, and suddenly Morgan's mind filled with images. Alina's world burning, her desperate escape, the centuries she'd spent in suspended animation traveling to Earth. He felt her loneliness, her fear, but also her growing connection to him and to Millbrook. When the vision ended, tears streaked both their faces. I needed you to understand, she whispered. Why I came, why I stayed. Morgan pulled her close, their bodies fitting together as though designed as complementary pieces of the same puzzle. I understand, he assured her. Their kiss deepened with the weight of shared knowledge and limited time. As clothing fell away, the chamber's crystals seemed to pulse in rhythm with their heartbeats. Alina's skin glowed wherever Morgan touched her, leaving trails of light that lingered like afterimages. Their lovemaking transcended physical connection. Thoughts, memories, and sensations flowed between them in waves that rippled outward, causing the ancient technology around them to resonate in harmonic patterns. Afterward, wrapped in Morgan's jacket, Alina worked with renewed focus. The connection between us strengthens the shield, she explained, programming the final sequences. It's drawing on both our genetic patterns now. A sudden commotion from the tunnel entrance interrupted them. Sheriff Tanner backed into the chamber, his weapon drawn. They found us, he reported grimly. Government types, lots of them. They're demanding we turn over the extraterrestrial entity immediately. Alina's face hardened with resolve. The preparations are nearly complete, I just need. Her words were cut short by the sound of an explosion above. Dust and rock fragments showered down as the tunnel entrance began to collapse. They're blasting their way in, Tanner shouted over the rumbling. Morgan looked from the tunnel to Alina, then to the half-activated shield generator. Their 15 days had just run out. In the chaos, Mayor Bailey appeared from the partially collapsed tunnel, her expression a mixture of triumph and fear. This ends now, she declared, men in tactical gear filing in behind her. You're coming with us, Alina. Your technology belongs to the United States government. What no one noticed was the console behind Alina beginning to pulse with increasing urgency, responding to the threat and to her rising emotions. The countdown to the solar event's impact had begun, but so had another sequence, one that Alina hadn't planned. As government agents moved forward to apprehend her, Alina met Morgan's gaze one last time, her eyes conveying a silent promise. Whatever happened next would determine not just their fate, but the survival of Millbrook and perhaps much more. The ancient chamber beneath Millbrook Lake trembled, dislodging dust from crevices untouched for millennia. Alina stood at the center of the confrontation, her body positioned protectively in front of the pool's control console as government agents advanced cautiously through the debris. You don't understand what you're interfering with, she said, her voice carrying an otherworldly resonance that made several agents hesitate. In less than 12 hours, a solar ejection will hit Earth with enough electromagnetic force to destroy your civilization's infrastructure. This facility is your only protection. That's exactly why we need to study it, replied a man in a dark suit who pushed past Mayor Bailey. I'm Director Harlow, Department of Special Scientific Research. We've been monitoring unusual phenomena for decades. This technology is too valuable to remain in untrained hands. Morgan stepped forward, placing himself between Alina and the agents. She's the only one who knows how to operate it. You can't just take her away. Dr. Reeves, Harlow's tone was coldly professional. Your relationship with the entity has been documented. Your judgment is compromised. Sheriff Tanner still held his weapon, though he was clearly outnumbered. This is still my jurisdiction, he growled. Nobody's taking anyone anywhere without proper. A blinding flash cut him off as the console behind Alina surged with energy. The liquid metal pillar at the chamber's center began rotating faster, generating a low-frequency hum that made teeth vibrate and ears pop. It's starting, Alina gasped, her eyes wide with urgency. "The preliminary wave has reached your upper atmosphere." Director Harlow pressed a finger to his earpiece, listening intently before his expression shifted from skepticism to alarm. "Confirm that," he ordered whoever was on the other end of the communication. After a moment, his face paled. "Global communications are experiencing unexplained disruptions. Satellites are going dark." "Just as I warned," Alina said, "this is only the beginning." A series of tremors shook the chamber, more violent than before. Cracks appeared in the ceiling, sending water from the lake above trickling through in fine streams. "The chamber is destabilizing." Alina turned to Morgan, her expression grave. "The shield must be activated now, or it won't deploy in time." Director Harlow lowered his weapon fractionally. "What do you need?" "For you to step back and let me work," Alina replied, already moving toward the console. The government agents exchanged uncertain glances, but followed Harlow's reluctant nod and created space around the ancient technology. Alina's fingers flew across the obsidian surface, leaving trails of light in their wake. "Morgan," she called, "I need you. Our genetic bond is part of the activation sequence now." As Morgan joined her at the console, placing his hands where she indicated, Mayor Bailey stepped forward. "Wait," she said, her political bravado faltering. "What about the rest of the country, the world? Are we just saving ourselves?" Alina's face softened with unexpected compassion. "The shield has limitations, yes, but the data from this event, if properly shared, could help your scientists develop protective measures for future occurrences." She looked pointedly at Director Harlow. "If certain agencies are willing to collaborate rather than confiscate." Another tremor, stronger than the last, sent several people stumbling. A large crack appeared across the chamber's floor. "We're out of time," Alina announced. She pressed Morgan's hands firmly against the console's surface, then placed her own atop them. "This will hurt," she whispered to him, "but hold on." The pain was immediate and searing, like every cell in Morgan's body was being scanned and recorded. He would have collapsed if not for Alina's strength supporting him. Through the agony, he became aware of a new presence in his mind, Alina's consciousness, intertwining with his own. "I'm sorry," her thoughts echoed in his head. "The biological interface requires complete integration. I didn't tell you everything." Around them, the chamber transformed. The liquid metal pillar expanded upward, puncturing through the rock ceiling and presumably continuing through the lake above. The walls of the chamber became transparent, revealing a network of crystalline structures extending in all directions beneath Millbrook. "My God," breathed Director Harlow, "it's everywhere under the entire town." On the surface, Millbrook's residents watched in awe as the lake began to glow from within. A column of shimmering energy erupted from its center, spreading outward in a dome that encompassed the town and surrounding countryside. The dome rose higher and higher, eventually becoming almost invisible except for occasional ripples of light, like heat distortion on a summer day. Back in the chamber, Morgan fought to remain conscious as the connection between him and Alina intensified. Through their linked minds, he understood what she had known but hadn't told him. The shield required not just activation but continuous biological maintenance. Someone would need to remain connected to it for the duration of the solar event. "It was always going to be me," Alina's thoughts whispered. "My physiology is better suited to survive the connection." "But will you survive?" His thoughts reached back to her. Her mental voice was tinged with sadness. "I don't know." Above them, the sky turned an apocalyptic red as the solar flare washed over Earth's outer atmosphere. Within minutes, reports flooded in from the government agents' still functioning communication devices. Massive power failures across the globe, aircraft making emergency landings, satellites failing, panic spreading. Yet inside the shield, Millbrook remained untouched. Lights stayed on. Phones continued to work. The only evidence of the catastrophe beyond their protective bubble was the unearthly glow in the sky and the absolute silence from the outside world. Hours passed in the chamber beneath the lake. Government scientists arrived, setting up monitoring equipment around the edges of the room, careful not to disturb the connection between Alina, Morgan, and the ancient technology. Mayor Bailey organized the townspeople, preparing shelters and distributing supplies as Alina had instructed. By the second day, it became clear that the shield was working perfectly, but at a cost. Alina's physical form began to change, becoming semi-transparent at times, her energy visibly flowing into the system she maintained. "She's becoming part of it," one of the government scientists observed. "The biological interface is consuming her." Morgan, still connected but able to maintain consciousness now, refused to leave her side despite his own deteriorating condition. "There has to be a way to stabilize her," he insisted. Director Harlow, who had remained in the chamber coordinating with what remained of his agency's command structure, approached cautiously. "My people have been analyzing the technology. There might be a way to modify the interface, distribute the biological load among multiple subjects." "You mean use humans as living batteries?" Sheriff Tanner asked incredulously. "Volunteers only," Harlow clarified. "Brief rotations, it might give her a chance to recover." On the third day, as the solar storm reached its peak intensity, 12 volunteers, including Sheriff Tanner, Councilwoman Alvarez, and even Mayor Bailey, stepped forward to join the connection. Government scientists had rigged a makeshift interface that allowed them to temporarily share the burden. The relief was immediate. Elena's form solidified, her consciousness pulling back from the precipice of complete integration with the ancient system. As her awareness returned fully to her body, she opened her eyes to find Morgan still beside her, exhausted but smiling. "You stayed," she whispered. "Always," he replied simply. By the fourth day, the solar storm began to subside. Outside the shield, the world was coming to terms with a changed reality. Power grids remained down across most continents. Communications were spotty at best. Modern civilization had taken a significant step backward. But inside their protected zone, Elena worked with both town officials and government scientists to prepare for the shield's deactivation. The technology had survived intact, and more importantly, so had the knowledge of how to use it. On the evening of the fifth day, as Elena prepared to power down the shield, Director Harlow approached her with an unexpected proposal. "My superiors, what's left of our chain of command, have authorized me to offer you citizenship," he said formally, "and a position heading a new division focused on adapting this technology to protect larger areas." Elena studied him carefully. "And if I decline?" "You've saved thousands of lives. No one's talking about detention anymore." Morgan, standing nearby, held his breath. They hadn't discussed what would happen after, whether she would stay or seek a way back to her own kind. As the shield powered down, Elena stood at the edge of the lake, watching the last traces of energy dissipate into the twilight sky. Morgan joined her, their hands finding each other without needing to look. "My ship was damaged beyond repair in the landing," she said quietly. "Even before the solar event, I knew when I arrived that this was likely a one-way journey." "Do you regret it?" Morgan asked. Elena turned to face him, her otherworldly eyes reflecting the emerging stars. "How could I regret finding a new home, new purpose?" Her hand rose to touch his face. "New love." Above them, a single point of light moved across the sky, not a star or satellite, but something else entirely. Elena tracked its movement with a knowing smile. "Others of my kind survived," she said softly. "They'll come eventually, curious about this protected region of an otherwise vulnerable planet." "Will you go with them when they do?" Morgan's voice betrayed his fear of her answer. Elena's laugh was like music. "Why would I leave? There's so much to do here." She gestured toward Millbrook, where lights were coming back on as the town's power system reset. "This is just the beginning. Your world needs to prepare for the next event, and the one after that." She leaned into him, her body fitting perfectly against his. "Besides, I've discovered something my people long thought impossible, genuine connection with another species. That's worth more than any interstellar journey." As they walked back toward town, Elena paused to look up once more at the recovering sky. "They laughed at my warnings," she mused. "Now they understand." "Not just about the solar flare," Morgan added. "About possibilities, about the fact that we're not alone in the universe." "You never were," Elena replied softly. In the days that followed, as the world beyond Millbrook struggled to rebuild, the town became a beacon of knowledge and hope. Government officials and scientists arrived daily, seeking to understand the technology that had saved them and the woman who had operated it. Elena shared what she could safely share, worked to adapt the ancient systems for broader use, and began training others, including Morgan, to maintain the facility beneath the lake. But each night she returned to the small house they now shared, shed the role of alien savior, and simply existed as a woman who had found her place in a world far from where she was born. 6 months after the event, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, Alina took Morgan's hand and placed it gently on her abdomen. "There's something you should know," she said, her eyes shimmering with emotion. "Something I didn't think possible." Morgan's eyes widened as he understood. "How?" "Our genetic compatibility goes deeper than I realized," she explained. "The bond we formed during the shield activation created something new." As Morgan processed the implications, Alina smiled at his wonder. "It seems I've found more than one way to ensure my people's legacy continues on Earth." Above them, the healed sky darkened to reveal stars that now held new meaning, not just distant lights, but potential homes, histories, futures. And in their small corner of one unremarkable galaxy, two beings from worlds separated by unimaginable distance had found that perhaps the universe wasn't so vast after all. The child of two worlds who would be born in Millbrook 9 months later would never know a time when humans looked to the stars and thought they were alone. And that, perhaps, was the greatest salvation of all.